the relevance of the history? Chief Judge Srinivasan, in his opinion, in the D.C. Circuit, emphasized that there is a long tradition of preventing foreign ownership or control of media in the United States, going back radio, television, and what have you. I would think no matter the level of scrutiny, that history has to be important, and I want to get your response to it.
I don't actually think it's important in this context, because that history all arises in the context of bandwidth scarcity. And in that context, you have the government that's in the position of doling out a limited number of licenses. And when you have to dole out a limited number of licenses, you by definition have to pick winners and losers. And when you have to do that, you get a certain amount of discretion. I think that's the whole basis of those cases. You can't really take those cases
keep going.
You can't really take those cases and extend them to an area where there is no scarcity, like the World Wide Web. Because once you do that, there's really no limiting principle. There's no reason why it wouldn't also apply to really popular books or magazines or newspapers or chains of newspapers. The bandwidth scarcity, I think, is really what justifies the greater discretion that the government gets in that area.
Mr. Francisco, let me see if I can break this down. Suppose that TikTok were outright owned by the People's Republic of China. Would you make the same argument?
I wouldn't be making the same argument, Your Honor.
Why not?
Because there you would have to confront a very different question, whether a foreign government that was speaking in the United States has First Amendment rights, and I don't know that the court has ever addressed that. But here we've got a U.S.
No, I understand that. I just want to see where you draw the line. So it's true, the court has never held that a foreign government has free speech rights. And if we were to hold that, I would think it would be because speech by a foreign government, particularly one with enormous resources, is not protected. Allowing that does not serve the underlying interests of the First Amendment, which are, among other things, fostering democratic self-government and furthering the search for truth. So let's assume that we start with that, all right? What if TikTok were then not owned by the foreign government, but it was undisputed that TikTok was totally controlled by the foreign government, could not do one thing without the approval of the foreign government? That's different?
I do think that it is different, Your Honor. For example, I've given the hypothetical that I've given, but there are a lot of companies in this country that have foreign owners, not just companies like Politico, which is German-owned, or Al Jazeera, which is partly owned by the government of Qatar.
Well, I understand that, but what would be the reason for drawing that line?
Sure,
if there's a good reason for saying that a foreign government, particularly an adversary, does not have free speech rights in the United States, why would it all change if it was simply hidden under some kind of contrived corporate structure?
Because it is a U.S. speaker. I'll give you another example. AMC movie theaters used to be owned by a Chinese company. Under this theory, Congress could order AMC movie theaters to censor any movies that Congress doesn't like or promote any movies that Congress wanted. And I think the reason is that here, where it's conceded, you actually have a bona fide U.S. company. It is not simply a Chinese cutout that is the Chinese government speaking itself,
all right,
but an independent United States company.
Let's say this is not a complete answer to your First Amendment argument, but would you be willing to concede that this is a very important factor that should be taken into account in deciding whether there's a First Amendment violation?
Well, Your Honor, I think that it does help supply a compelling governmental interest, but I still think you have to march through the strict scrutiny analysis and analyze their interests. I do not think that they have a compelling governmental interest in the manipulation of content. I think that is in the teeth of the First Amendment, and if you look at the government's brief and the rest of the record in this case, that's really what it's focused on. Their complaint is the fear that the content could be critical of the United States government or could undermine our democracy. Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Francisco,